Amy thought her world had finally found peace after all the storms that had hit Heartland Ranch. The horses were calm, the mornings were quiet, and for once, her heart didn't ache. But peace doesn't last long in a place built on love, loss, and second chances. That morning, as the wind brushed through the tall grass and the sound of hooves echoed in the distance, Amy had no idea that someone she thought was gone forever was about to walk back into her life. The sun rose gently over the Heartland Ranch, painting the fields in soft gold. The horses grazed lazily near the fence, their breath turning into mist in the early chill. Amy stood near the stable, her hands resting on the worn wooden gate. It was a moment of quiet she had learned to treasure. Since Ty had left, silence had become her only companion. The mornings no longer started with his teasing laugh or his voice calling from the barn. Everything had slowed down, yet nothing felt settled. She kept herself busy training Spartan, brushing his mane, and fixing anything that reminded her too much of him. That morning, the world seemed still. Lou had gone to town, Jack was fixing the old tractor, and Amy was alone with her thoughts. She tried not to think about Ty, but even the smallest sound, a door creaking, a truck passing by, brought his memory rushing back. The empty coffee mug on the porch still sat where he used to leave it. The stable smelled of the same pine soap he liked to use. Every corner of the ranch whispered his name, no matter how hard she tried to forget. As she walked toward the paddock, she noticed the horses acting uneasy. Spartan stomped the ground, flicking his tail nervously. Something was off. Amy frowned, brushing her hair from her face as she looked toward the dirt road leading up to the ranch. A thin trail of dust rose in the air, swirling in the morning light. A vehicle was approaching. For a second, her heart skipped. Visitors were rare at this hour. She stood still, trying to make out the shape through the dust. Her hand brushed the side of the stable door, gripping it tightly without realizing it. The sound of the engine grew louder, closer, until it stopped near the front gate. Amy took a deep breath. She wasn't expecting anyone, and part of her didn't want to. Every time she hoped it was Ty, she ended up disappointed. So she forced herself to turn away, pretending she didn't care. But something inside her, something quiet and stubborn, told her to look again. The truck door opened. A figure stepped out, the kind of presence that pulled her attention no matter how hard she tried to look away. Her chest tightened, and for a moment, the air around her seemed to hold still. The ranch had seen its share of surprises, but this one would change everything. Amy didn't know it yet, but the past she had tried so hard to leave behind was already walking back toward her. The moment Amy saw the old truck, her breath caught. She didn't move, didn't blink, just watched as the engine cut off and silence filled the air again. Her heart thumped, slow and heavy. It couldn't be him. Not now. Not after all this time. The wind brushed against her face, carrying the faint smell of dust and oil, smells that used to mean Ty was nearby. For a second, her world felt like it had slipped backward, pulling her into a place she wasn't ready to visit again. She tried to shake the thought away and turned toward the barn. The horses sensed her unease. Spartan snorted and stepped closer, his eyes following her. Amy placed a trembling hand on his mane. "It's okay," she whispered, though the words were more for herself than for him. But deep down, she knew things were far from okay. Every step she took across the dirt felt heavier, like the ground was remembering him too. The wooden boards creaked under her boots, and for a moment, she imagined hearing Ty's laughter bouncing off the walls. Sharp, warm, and full of life. The kind of sound that used to make her smile without trying. Since Ty left, Amy had learned how to keep going. The ranch needed her. The horses needed her. Life moved forward, even when her heart didn't want to. She had spent long nights staring at the stars, wondering where he was, what he was doing, and if he ever thought about Heartland the way she did. But every sunrise reminded her that he was gone, and wishing wouldn't bring him back. She had convinced herself that she didn't need him, that she was stronger without him. That lie had become her shield. Inside the barn, she picked up the grooming brush and started working on Spartan's coat. The familiar rhythm calmed her, the sound of bristles against fur steadying her heartbeat. But then something shifted. A shadow fell across the barn door, long and familiar. Amy froze. Her hand stopped mid-brush. The air grew thick. She didn't need to look up to know. She could feel it. The weight of someone's gaze on her, the quiet tension of someone standing just close enough to change everything. Her fingers clenched around the brush. For a heartbeat, she thought about running, about pretending she hadn't noticed. But her voice betrayed her before her thoughts could catch up. "Ty," she said, barely above a whisper. The name slipped out like a secret she wasn't supposed to tell. It was the name she had whispered into the wind, the name she had tried to forget and never could. There was no answer at first, only the sound of boots on the dirt floor. Amy turned slowly, afraid that her imagination was playing tricks on her again. But it wasn't a dream. The man standing in the doorway was real. His clothes were dusty, his hair longer, his eyes tired but familiar. Ty Borden was back at Heartland. The barn seemed smaller now, filled with the weight of everything left unsaid. Amy's chest ached, caught between anger and relief. She wanted to speak, to ask why, to tell him how much his leaving had hurt. But the words wouldn't come. All she could do was stare, the sound of her heartbeat filling the silence between them. The past had just walked back into her life, and Amy realized that no matter how far she had tried to run from it, Heartland had been waiting for this moment all along. The barn door creaked open wider, and sunlight spilled across the floor like a slow confession. Dust swirled in the air, glowing gold and soft, but Amy's heart pounded too loud to notice its beauty. Ty stood there, framed by light and memory, looking both familiar and foreign. The years apart had changed him. His clothes were worn, his face shadowed with tiredness, but his eyes, those same steady eyes, still held the weight of every promise he'd made before he left. For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath, waiting for her reaction. Amy's hands trembled. She wanted to speak, to move, to scream at him for disappearing without a word. But the part of her that had missed him so fiercely froze her in place. He took a small step forward, the wooden floor groaning under his boots. And that sound broke her silence like thunder breaking a still sky. "I didn't think you'd still be here," Ty said quietly. His voice carried a strange mix of guilt and longing, a voice that had once made her laugh during the longest days. Amy swallowed hard. She didn't know if she wanted to cry or turn away. Her voice came out smaller than she expected. "You left, Ty. You didn't say goodbye. You just..." She stopped herself before the tears could finish her sentence. She had imagined this moment 100 times, but now that it was here, it didn't feel like any of those dreams. It wasn't sweet or peaceful. It was messy. It was real. Ty's gaze dropped to the ground. "I had to figure things out. I wasn't ready. For this. For Heartland. For you." His words hung between them like smoke. Impossible to grab. Impossible to clear. Amy wanted to believe him, but her heart still carried the sting of every day he hadn't come back. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the barn doors and sending loose straw swirling through the air. Spartan snorted again, sensing the tension that neither of them could hide. Amy wiped her palms against her jeans and took a step closer. "And now?" she asked softly. "Why are you here now?" Ty lifted his eyes, and something inside her cracked. "Because I never stopped thinking about this place. About you." The truth in his tone shook her more than the words themselves. She wanted to be angry, but anger couldn't stand in the face of honesty. Not his, not after everything they'd shared. For a long moment, neither spoke. The barn was filled only with the sound of the wind and the quiet breath between them. The horses shifted, restless. Amy's heart ached, caught between the safety of the past and the fear of what his return meant for her future. When she finally found her voice again, it was soft but steady. "You can't just walk back in and expect everything to be the same." Ty nodded slowly. "I know, I don't want things to be the same. I just want a chance to make it right." Amy turned away, blinking back tears she didn't want him to see. She had spent so long trying to forget him, but now that he was standing there, she realized forgetting had never been the same as letting go. And as the sunlight faded behind the barn, Amy knew that Heartland would never be the same again. For a long while, neither of them moved. The ranch outside seemed frozen in time, the trees still, the horses quiet, the world waiting to see what Amy would do. The light had changed, soft gold melting into orange as the sun dipped lower across the fields. Inside the barn, every sound felt louder. The slow creak of the rafters, the soft scrape of Ty's boots, the uneven rhythm of Amy's breath. She turned toward him slowly, her eyes searching for the boy she used to know in the man who stood before her. There he was, hidden beneath tired eyes and guilt. But he was still there. The same boy who had once stood by her through loss and pain, who had understood her silence better than anyone else ever could. Her voice trembled when she finally spoke. "You hurt me, Ty. You left without a word, and I tried to tell myself it didn't matter, but it did." Ty nodded, his jaw tight. "I know. I can't change what I did, Amy. I thought leaving was the right thing, that maybe you'd be better off without me. But I was wrong." He looked down, the weight of his regret showing in every line of his face. "You were never the thing I needed to walk away from. You were the only thing that felt right. The words cut through her like wind slicing across open fields, sharp, honest, and real. Amy wanted to hate him for saying them, for coming back now, when she had finally started to find her balance again. But her heart, stubborn as always, betrayed her. The truth was she had missed him every day, not just his presence, but the way he made her feel, safe, seen, and alive. Silence filled the space between them, thick but no longer painful. Amy stepped closer, her hand brushing the wooden beam beside her for balance. "You don't get to fix this with words," she said softly. "Heartland isn't just a place you come back to when things fall apart. It's a part of who we are." Ty's eyes met hers, steady now. "Then let me be part of it again," he said simply. "Not because it's easy, but because it's home." The word home hung in the air like a heartbeat. For a moment, everything felt still again. The pain, the memories, the distance. Amy looked at him, and in that look was every emotion she had buried for months. Anger, relief, love, fear, all tangled together like the roots of an old oak tree that refused to die. Outside, Spartan let out a soft whinny, as if sensing that something had shifted. Amy smiled faintly for the first time that day, though tears shimmered in her eyes. "You're late, Ty," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. But maybe not too late. Ty's expression softened. He took one cautious step closer, leaving the rest of the space between them for her to decide. Amy didn't move away this time. The distance wasn't gone, but it wasn't impossible either. It was the kind of space that could be bridged, with time, with trust, with forgiveness. As the last light of evening slipped through the barn window, painting the walls in golden shadow, Amy realized that some stories don't end when someone leaves. They pause, they wait, and sometimes, if the heart is strong enough, they begin again. Outside, the sky burned with color, and the ranch seemed alive again. The horses settled, the wind softened, and for the first time in months, Amy's heart felt light. Ty was back, not as a ghost of what once was, but as a man trying to rebuild what had been lost. And as she watched him standing there, under the fading light of Heartland, Amy knew this was only the beginning of a new chapter neither of them had expected, but both needed to live. The first light of dawn crept over Heartland, painting the sky in pale shades of gold and pink. The ranch looked almost the same as it always had, quiet, calm, wrapped in the stillness of morning. But something in the air had changed. The kind of change that doesn't shout or rush in. It whispers, it lingers, it waits to be felt. Amy stood on the porch, holding a mug of coffee that had long gone cold, watching the horses stir in the pasture. She could still feel the echo of last night in her chest, the words, the looks, the truth she'd been too afraid to face. Ty had returned. That was a fact now, as real as the sunrise before her. But the reasons, the weight of his leaving, and what his coming back truly meant, all of that still hung between them like an unfinished sentence. She could hear him moving inside the barn, the soft scrape of a shovel, the familiar hum he always made when he worked. It used to be background noise, something she never paid attention to. Now every sound felt heavy, loaded with memory. Amy wrapped her arms around herself, unsure of what she felt. She had dreamed about this day, imagined 100 different versions of it, some filled with anger, others with tears, but none like this. This was quiet, real, raw. There was no shouting, no dramatic ending. Just two people standing in the middle of their shared history, unsure how to start again. Jack stepped out of the house, his weathered face calm as he looked across the yard. "Didn't think I'd see that boy again," he said quietly. Amy didn't answer. She didn't need to. He could see everything in her eyes. Jack placed a hand on her shoulder, steady and warm. "Heartland has a funny way of bringing people back when they're meant to be here," he said. "But it's up to you to decide if you'll let them stay." The words stayed with her long after he walked away. She looked back toward the barn. Ty was standing by Spartan now, his hand resting on the horse's neck. Spartan didn't shy away this time. It was as if he remembered too. Amy smiled faintly, feeling the smallest spark of something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Not the kind that fixes everything overnight, but the quiet kind. The kind that grows one sunrise at a time. She walked down the steps slowly, the gravel crunching beneath her boots. Ty turned when he heard her coming. He didn't speak, didn't move closer, just watched her with that same patient look that had always made her heart ache. For a moment, they simply stood there. No past, no promises, just the soft hum of the morning and the sound of the horses breathing. Amy broke the silence first. "You can help with the horses today," she said, her tone calm but not cold. "If you want to?" Ty nodded once, a small smile tugging at his lips. "I'd like that." And just like that, something in the air shifted again. Not a grand moment, not a sudden reconciliation, just the beginning of something new. A fragile peace built on everything they had been through. Amy turned toward the pasture, her voice quiet but steady. "Heartland doesn't change for anyone," she said softly. "You either find your place in it, or it finds a way to remind you who you are." As the sun climbed higher, the ranch came alive. Horses galloped through the fields. The wind carried the scent of hay and dust, and somewhere deep inside, Amy felt her heart start to heal. Ty's return hadn't solved everything, but it had reminded her of something she had almost forgotten. Heartland was more than just a ranch. It was a place where second chances were born, and though neither of them said it out loud, both knew the truth. This wasn't the end of their story. It was the beginning of another one. Evening fell softly over Heartland, washing the ranch in shades of amber and blue. The long day had settled, the horses quiet, the air still. Amy leaned against the fence, her gaze fixed on the horizon where the sun had just disappeared. The day had been calm, too calm. Ty's presence had changed the rhythm of everything, like a single drop in still water that sends ripples farther than anyone expects. Behind her, the barn lights flickered on. She could hear Ty inside, working late, the sound of tools clinking softly against the wood. It was strange how easily the old habits returned. The sound of him there should have felt natural, but it didn't. Not yet. There was still a distance, not in steps, but in trust. The kind of distance that time alone couldn't erase. Amy closed her eyes, listening to the quiet. Heartland had always been a place where stories began again, where pain turned into lessons, and where love learned to survive. But sometimes the past doesn't stay buried. Sometimes it waits, quietly, just beyond the next sunrise. The wind shifted, carrying a chill through the air. From the direction of the old trail, a faint sound broke the silence. An engine. Slow, deliberate, familiar. Amy turned toward the road, her heartbeat quickening. A dark truck rolled up the long dirt path, its headlights cutting through the twilight. Ty stepped out of the barn, his expression tense the moment he heard it. He froze, his eyes locked on the approaching vehicle. Amy's voice came out low, uncertain. "You know who that is, don't you?" Ty's jaw tightened. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I think I do." The truck came to a stop near the gate, dust curling around it like fog. The door opened and a figure stepped out, someone neither of them expected to see again. Amy's stomach turned, the piece of the day vanishing in an instant. Whoever it was, their arrival wasn't random. Heartland had felt too calm for too long, and now the calm was breaking. Ty took a step forward, his voice firm but careful. "Stay here, Amy," she didn't answer. The sky darkened, the crickets fell silent, and for a heartbeat, everything hung in suspense. The return of Ty Borden had already shaken Heartland, but this was something else, something unfinished. The stranger's voice carried through the still air. "Been a while, Ty," Amy's breath caught. She didn't know what this meant yet, but one thing was certain. The peace they'd found today was only temporary. Heartland's story wasn't done. It was just turning the page. As the camera fades out, the soft hum of the wind carries Amy's whisper, full of fear and quiet determination. Whatever this is, we face it together. The screen darkens. The sound of horses in the distance fades into silence. Then, a faint text appears across the screen. Next on Heartland, old secrets don't stay buried for long. The night sky stretched endlessly above Heartland, a quiet blanket of stars shimmering over the open fields. The ranch slept, but not in peace. Something new was stirring, something uncertain. Inside the barn, the faint glow of a lantern spilled through the cracks in the wood, casting long shadows across the yard. Amy stood at the doorway, her arms crossed, her thoughts heavy but clear. Ty had come back, yes, but with him came everything she thought she had buried. The memories, the hurt, and the hope she wasn't ready to admit still lived inside her. The camera lingers on her face, not with sadness, but with strength. She looks toward the pasture where Spartan stands calm under the moonlight, and for a moment, her voice breaks the silence, soft but sure. "Sometimes," she says, "the hardest part isn't letting someone go, it's letting them back in." Ty appears in the distance, locking up the gate, the light from the lantern flickering between them. Their eyes meet briefly, not in understanding yet, but in promise. a fragile one built on the hope that maybe, after everything, they can find their way back. Not to what they were, but to something new. The wind rises, carrying the faint sound of the horses breathing and the whisper of the leaves. The scene fades into the horizon as the narrator's voice begins. Steady, warm, and full of feeling. At Heartland, every sunrise tells a new story. One of love, forgiveness, and the courage to begin again. Ty's return may have reopened old wounds, but it also brought back something Amy thought she had lost forever. Hope. The camera pans upward, showing the wide-open sky over the ranch, the stars glimmering brighter as the music swells softly beneath the narration. But in places like Heartland, peace never comes easy. And as one chapter closes, another waits just beyond the dawn. The screen slowly fades to black. Heartland, the story continues. Subscribe for more episodes.